Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi for the Sunday Live, discussing the 20th Party Congress of the Communist Party of China, the re-anointment of Xi Jinping, which is coming up. There were a lot of rumors about him being purged himself in a coup, and then Xi Jinping, like the prodigal son, has re-emerged. So let's begin with that. A lot of reports talk about Xi Jinping taking the mandatory quarantine after international travel rather than being purged in a sort of a coup that was being proposed by many people, sir.
Well, all these stories will be told, but we don't know the actual truth. Okay. Uh, but uh, we had said in our last show that the chances of a coup are less likely,
Yes, sir.
right? Uh, but the chances of a purge were very high. Okay. And there is no doubt that there's been some internal resistance.
Mhm.
Uh, there's this gentleman called Songping who's 104 years old. Okay, who has written some kind of a article, or he's gone on video or something like that, public, and he's used Xi Jinping's own words about reform, which he said 5 years back and said we should do that. And he is the guy who's reputed to have brought in Hu Jintao and supported Wen Jiabao.
Okay.
So there is some internal resistance on that. There's no doubt. So the coup might not be the real thing, but there might be something else. The purge is in all probability a reality. Okay, so interesting times, and now that probably whatever has happened, Xi Jinping has sufficed in public, and he's heading towards the 20th Party Congress to crown himself as the king of China.
That was the design I have put up as a thumbnail as well, him crowning himself. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
that's what it is. So, but let's look at certain factors which are playing around in China today. One of the biggest things that people are talking about, and the Chinese themselves are talking about, is some amount of resistance that Xi Jinping internally is facing. Um,
Yeah, we said
there
that.
are
I just mentioned it. Zongping, who's 104 years, has written a thing, and there is a lot of people who are increasingly speaking out. So, and there's also an economic debate. Which way should China go? So
no.
all this is there. So there is internal. It's not a bed of roses for Xi Jinping.
So there's of course a lot of resistance with regards to his anointment as well, which is peeking out in terms of some articles and some write-ups here and there. I believe 3, 4 very senior retired Communist Party members sat down together and wrote an article talking about the dangerous times ahead, and it was published in China Daily as well. So it's something that we can see. Let's talk about the economy, sir. To begin with, of course, the Chinese economy has, as we've discussed this over the past year, that the Chinese economy is not what it's being projected to. But the growth outlook currently is being showcased at 2.8%. That is lower than the 3.3% earlier being spoken about, sir.
Yeah, that's where it is. If you have zero COVID and a property crisis and all those things, how will your economy go up? Right? And even this 2.8, in my way of looking at it, is a little on the plus side. If you cook
Mhm.
up figures, it will come to 2.8. You have to understand this quarter will be less, and it will, in all probability, contract. Okay. So in this financial year, the saving grace will be the earlier quarters, which had some growth. So that's why 2.8. Otherwise, it would be really a contraction.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? And
Mhm.
take into account there's a whole lot of youth unemployment. Up to about 20% of young graduates are unemployed. That property crisis has not blown over, right? It is still there, live. Okay, and when you bring down multi-storied buildings, it
Hmm.
tells its own story of the economy. Significantly, the imports are down and the exports are down. So your manufacturing base is hit.
Factory
Uh,
outputs.
yeah, factory outputs are low. So all those issues are there, right? So economically, I don't think China is doing well, and this will last for some time. The way I look at it.
Indeed, sir. Main things that I want to focus on is a small breakup of what China is going through right now. And allow me a minute, sir. The Chinese economy in terms of the real estate market is valued about $5 trillion internally. Uh, let's say about 30 or 40% of that is kind of down. So that's about 2.5 trillion. Their Belt and Road, about $1 trillion worth of it is supposed to be under bad debts right now, which is 60% of its basically international holdings. Uh, Zero COVID and Shanghai's economy is down by another 25-30%, and that's something Shanghai has not been able to come up. That's $1 trillion again, and the Chinese have, I believe, $6 trillion in their international forex reserves. When you compare just these two three things that I've mentioned, it's crossing $6 trillion right there. So they're basically a loss making firm.
Yes, there's no doubt. All that big talk of China economy booming, surplus economy is all gone. Not only that, they at places I've read that it is even cash strapped. There's no liquidity. There's a liquidity crisis in China, and as per some estimates. So I don't lay much stress on the Chinese economy, uh, that it is infallible. Okay, so we will leave it at that. And zero COVID is going on. Even this 20th Party Congress is going to endorse the zero COVID policy.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of problems of China originate from zero COVID. Okay, and the news which is coming out is that Xi Jinping is going to opt for a weaker economy rather than a weaker health. Okay, so zero COVID will go on, and all this is amongst the ongoing climate change which is going on. Look, the drought started in June. It is
Mm.
now we have hit October.
So,
Just today, in South China Morning Post, I read that Poyang Lake is below red water mark. 28, there's only water in 28% of that lake, and it is supposed to be the biggest freshwater lake. We are in the fifth month of drought, so it's not going to. I mean, there are issues, and then the demographic crisis is not going anywhere. It's coming closer. Okay, when a country starts taking survey as to why you are not producing children, then there's some serious trouble. If they don't know why their own countrymen are not producing children, right? Then there's a problem at hand. So the backdrop against which this 20th Party Congress is going in is a little weak. In the sense, it's worrisome for China from many points. And of course, don't forget that the internationally that Pew Research has said uh, the international view of China is poor.
mm.
Most importantly, Korea, Japan, and Australia, which are the neighboring big countries or powerful countries, uh, they don't have a great opinion of China. Okay, so all these things are involved in it.
Interestingly, so against all this, and one would expect to see what is actually happening in China is basically a hardline approach towards its uh, plan for all these things. If you read the Xi Jinping thought, it's about radical changes. It's about making sure that the entire setup is focused towards what, as you're saying, zero COVID, common prosperity, and stuff like that. One of the most interesting thing that we are seeing today is the Xi Jinping thought, which is being put across as the core value of the Chinese Communist Party. Uh,
Yeah.
One, you analyze this whole Xi Jinping thought, and the Chinese had promised themselves that they will not let a cult being formed again around a person, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, they don't have a choice because he's forming the cult. That's the first thing. But look, Xi Jinping thought is a big thing to say, but what does it involve? What has he
Yes.
said? I mean, let me dwell on it a bit. First, in that recent article, he said that China has never been closer to completing national rejuvenation, but major challenges remain. So, under him, China is rejuvenated, but there are problems, so only he can solve them. So, that's the first part. Okay. He's talk of communism with Chinese characteristics,
Characteristics.
right? He's talking of struggle against whom? He's talking of state control. He's talking of hard military power to make China the greatest military power. He's also talking of strong economic power. He his thought also talks of dominating great power relations.
Hmm.
He's looking at establishing a Sino-centric global order. I mean, he wants to very clearly jettison economic liberalization and unbalanced material and culture and inequity. All these things he wants to banish. What are his watchwords? Watchwords are he talks of signification of Marxism. So he's a dyed in the wool Marxist. We all know that. He's talking of an anti-corruption campaign, part of his thought. All this is part. It's coming back in some form or the other in this 20th Party Congress. He's talking of common prosperity. He's also speaking of victory over COVID, surprisingly. Okay. He is he looks like as if he's going to propagate a new model of win-win cooperation, right? Uh, he's talking of dual circulation, okay,
Yeah.
and revenge on the century of humiliation. All this is spoken of, right? That's his thought. Now, how far will that thought go is a is a different issue, right? Uh, and he wants to be the champion of global communism.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part of his this thing. I mean, he feels the Chinese Communist Party is the standard bearer of global social movement or socialist movement or the communist movement. Okay, uh, he says the Chinese model has to self-correct so that it avoids the problems which it had during of the Soviet Union,
Hmm.
basically, right?
That is the fear.
That is a fear. So he's looking at self-correction. He knows that it is a vulnerable system, and he's also spoken that there are 130 socialist or communist parties active in about 100 countries, and these people are the leader of that lot. So that means a global order based on these 100 countries, with China as the standard flag bearer. So
Dreams.
that will become a
Chinese
that will become
dreams.
a no. That's a Sino-centric global
Yeah,
order.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and he has opined that many countries look at China with envy to learn what China has achieved and their governance model. I mean, to some extent, he's right because those people who are absolutely cutter communists will think of him as God.
They do.
Ah, they do. Okay. He also does not want to go back to the old path of isolation and dogmatism. Right? That is something very funny. He's taking the country back to isolationism, but he says, no, we don't want to be isolated and we don't want to be dogmatic about whatever we are doing. Okay. He is also not, he's also enunciated that we will never take the evil path of changing flags. or color change, as he puts it, color revolution. But this is against the fact that China is open to infiltrating regimes and toppling them from inside through subversion. Okay, and they've been doing it very successfully in India in a few places. Okay, right. What is interesting in this global order, Sino-centric order, is that they feel that the BRI, see, BRI is active in about 100 odd countries. Okay, now in those countries, uh, it is the global south. So he's got leadership of the global south as far he's concerned. Okay, he's got the global leadership for all socialist countries. The global south, the poorer countries under BRI under his thumb. All the communist countries are under his thumb. Okay, BRICS, he feels stronger countries, but they are under the leadership of China. There are no equals there in BRICS. He is the boss. And the Shanghai Cooperation thing, which is coming against as a block against the West, which again is China centric. So the combination of these four gives a Sino-centric global outlook with Chinese communism. I mean, you see this construct which is coming through? Okay, so that's the communist outlook, right? Now, the next thing is all this is backed by a very hardline approach. Okay, the diplomatic corps will continue with their wolf warriorism.
Wolf warriorism.
Okay, then they'll be assertive in whatever they want. You heard this fellow, this ambassador in Delhi, trying to talk his way through. I mean, interestingly, they've said that they'll adopt a hardline attitude with their enemies, and they'll be more proactive with them. But they'll also be proactive with those countries which they feel as weak and friendly. Weak countries हड़प लो और friendly countries के साथ, so that they are receptive towards China. Okay. And they will develop friendships with other countries which have a common stance on Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and South China Sea. मतलब,
The global handful.
yeah. So, and they should not interfere, those countries who resent interference in China's internal affairs.
Yeah.
So, what are they doing? They're changing the international well-established rules-based order to a Sino-centric global order. That's the hardline approach which they're taking. I mean, we have to understand what is this 20th Party Congress all about. Most of us don't understand this. That's why I'm dwelling on all this. Okay, what is this? And then there's this business of common prosperity. What is common prosperity? They feel that there's too much inequity. The people who are rich are becoming richer, and the people who are poor are confined to that. So we should narrow the wealth gap. They also say it's a two-tongue thing. It does not mean killing the rich and helping the poor. It means robbing the rich and helping the poor. Robin Hood, Chinese Robin Hood. And all the regulations are, if you see the past 5-6 months, are aimed at private firms, tycoons, and celebrities. Okay, they want to cut the cost of living pressures for the common man. They are undertaking anti-extravagance drives and promoting frugality in society. So this is part of, and also amongst party members, so that they don't go corrupt. This is all part of the common prosperity. And then they're looking at a red economy. What is this red economy about? The red economy is of being self-sufficient and to some extent isolated. It means primacy of the state enterprises over the private enterprises. And all old economic rules are broken. Now they're so broken today in China that the foreign firms don't know whether to continue there or exit, whether to invest or not. So there is a loss of investment also happening simultaneously. So this in effect, if I put it across, is what is going on. Will what you're going to see in the 20th Party Congress.
Interestingly, sir, first of all, thanks, Money, for this super sticker. Grateful. Uh, you know, I want to point out a couple of things that you mentioned. Common prosperity and the Chinese Robin Hood. Uh, it is being made for us to understand that this is how they want to reduce the societal differences amongst the Chinese people between the rich and the poor and stuff like that. But the real story is something else. The real story is that the Chinese private sector, which is basically in the core of the Chinese growth, is probably becoming a little too strong for the CCP and and Xi Jinping's liking. Uh,
They've done that. That is done. You see, they felt it and they've broken it.
yeah. So when
The
something
big
like
tech,
that
big
happens,
tech. No, no, the big tech, which was about 15 to 20% of their economy, has been destroyed.
yeah. So that's an additional in my calculation, sir,
Yeah,
of the 5
look,
trillion,
what
6
you're saying
trillion I
is
was
right.
talking about.
What? Yeah. See, the point is this: if you look at it, 50% of their economy is property and big tech
Yeah.
that's been destroyed,
So that's
right?
basically more than what they have. So
Yeah.
you're in a loss-making
So
firm.
they got to have. See, what is interesting is we all know that their economy is in shambles, but this 20th Party Congress is coming up. There's a cult coming up. There are huge contradictions which are there in China. The question is, where does it take China? So will China resort to, after Xi Jinping assumes the chair once again, will China become a dove or it will become a hawk? In all this, we should not forget that the military is never not being underfunded at all.
That will happen, sir. Any authoritarian regime will make sure that the military is kept up, and that
Up.
is a
So the point what I'm trying to make is how aggressive will China Xi Jinping
hmm,
get
hmm.
after this
Absolutely.
20th Party Congress?
So, guys, we are 22 minutes into the show. Request all of you, there are certain comments and questions which are coming in. Please do put out your questions and comments and thoughts about the discussion that we're having. Uh, it is interesting to see what's happening in China, and I'd like to place it on record here. And as a this thing, myself and General Shankar, we covered the China coup, and it picked up very well. As a matter of fact, the video did really well. We picked up a couple of trolls along the way. Somebody who calls himself Z as well, so that was interesting. I've picked up a couple of trolls which have been actually after my channel for the past some time. That's perfectly all right. It just tells us we're hitting the right spot and probably touching a certain nerve. But having said that, we were the only channel amongst the contemporary Indian channels which said that there is no coup. We don't know what has happened. Something has happened. We don't know what it is. Let's see and analyze what has happened. Here we are talking about today the complete Chinese economy and the Chinese structure which the Chinese Communist Party wants to change. Before I begin with my next question, please do hit the like button, check your subscription, and of course, just like Money did, if you can, do subscribe, do contribute to the Dev Talks effort. It'll really help me going forward and producing more and more good content for you. Because all this kind of content needs a lot of research and a lot of effort to kind of get this thing together. My next question to you, sir, is about a very very interesting thing that we are seeing is about the Chinese Communist Party issuing two things. One is a warning to their peers. I'd like to just take a moment to thank Pratik and Mr. Venki for sending us super chats. I will just take their question up after I finish mine. The biggest thing that we see is the party old retired people have been warned not to kind of say anything, and the Chinese, the army and the armed forces have been very clearly said that you need to be ready to sacrifice yourselves for the words of the party. Now, you and I jokingly talk about this, but anytime China puts out news like that, we want to, look at the opposite. When you look at an opposite on this particular factor, does it tell you that there's a lot of resentment within the older cadre of the Chinese Communist Party? And of course, there's some sort of pushback coming in from the PLA as well.
No, this is not a pushback
Mhm.
as far as PLA is concerned. It's a tradition in the CCP that the CCP controls the gun. The party controls the gun.
The right of
That is being
violence. Okay.
reinforced. That's
Mm,
being
mm.
reinforced. Okay, nothing more. But as far as the people who are talking against, that's a clear warning. Let's be clear about one thing. While there was no coup on return from SCO, there's definitely been the start of a push or a purge. Okay? This is part of that story. This is part of that story where inconvenient people will get are being told either you fall in line or you'll go. And some guys have been dealt with. So we'll see more of this. We'll see more of this. And for the PLA, part of that is a carrot, You do what I'm told, you'll get what you want. And he's put all young generals in the CMC. So he completely controls the gun. So no doubt of that. Yeah.
Interesting. I'd my final question before I hit on to the this thing is, sir, the reappointment, reanointment, all this seems done. I mean, let's just take that as happened. Xi Jinping will have a huge set of challenges, as what we've elucidated in front of all of us, and many more. Of course, COVID is not going away. They've recently found some new variant or something like that. Of course, I don't know how many of us are actually keeping a track of all that, except the Chinese themselves. He's got a large amount of challenges, and he's got global isolation sitting in front of him. Here is a party who wants to stay, and this is something that you had mentioned. I think we've taken this up a long time ago. They'd rather stay in power in a China which is weakened rather than lose power in a China that becomes a superpower. So they don't mind sacrificing Chinese growth to kind of push it down. When you see something like that, what is the future of the China dream?
Well, the China dream never existed.
Ouch.
Let's be very clear. There is no China dream. This China dream is something which is being manufactured by the Communist Party. And their dream is only power. Xi Jinping's China dream is but Xi Jinping heading China for life. Has any one Chinese said what is his dream?
Mhm.
No. So then what's the big
It's all
dream?
big words,
So,
common
no,
prosperity, this.
no. Look, let's be very clear. The China dream is not of the Chinese. It is of the Chinese Communist Party
Mhm.
and Xi Jinping. Okay. Definitely, the Chinese people are not rejuvenated with what's going on now. In fact, they're dejuvenated with the way the things are going economically or otherwise. I mean, let's be very frank. In this century, you need never not seen China in a worse condition than this. Worst condition. Okay. So let's not talk of any dream stream and all that. This is all this bloody dream is all full for Xi Jinping. One. Number two, the 20th Party Congress is all about Xi Jinping prolonging his uh, tenure through a constitutional amendment and grabbing power. And him taking out those people who can be a danger to him. The next rung of leadership will be changed. New faces will come up who are beholden to him so that his rule for life is perpetuated. So let's take
Thing.
questions on with this.
Absolutely. Sir, of course, it is not the subject, but this person has put up a super chat. So I'm just going to put up this question. Up to you if you want to answer it or not. That's
Yeah, yeah.
it's out of the subject, but I'll still respect his contribution and put it out. He says, "Respected sir, you said the British Army is the DNA in the last episode, and this is the episode. Let me tell you guys, it is got some traction in terms of comments and thought processes. Appreciate all sides of it. Uh, and you say that the Azadin Forge is not the DNA of the Indian Army. So, any comments?
Well,
Because I have a small one, and then we'll move back to China.
let me put it this way: one shouldn't look at it as a binary.
Yeah,
Okay, it is this or that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
uh, the fact is that the Indian Army has evolved from the British Army. Okay, it's part of the DNA. Equally, there are people of the
INA.
INA who are part of our thinking. That DNA is there. It might not be physical. And there's another thing which which you have to understand, that a lot of a good part of our army is descended from state forces who were not part of the British
Yeah,
Empire, British forces. So to say that this is not a thing, so there are all three factors to it.
absolutely. And just to also add to what the general has said, let me also say that there was a huge backlash that came across, and this has been written by Mahatma Gandhi himself, who spoke about the Indian Army, talking about the Indian, the INA trials that were taking place, and giving a lot of resistance. Now, getting back to China with I would say an excellent statement by Mr. Venki. He says China is an octopus, and the octopus always uses his ink for subterfuge. Indeed.
QED. Well, I like it, Venki. You
I
come up
think
with original things. Yeah,
this
I
is
think
this
he's
is
right.
damn original. Venki Saab, hats off and a salute to you. Damn good. Let's move on to the next question. If there is nothing wrong with China, and what is a possible plausible explanation for the mass flight cancellations, PLA convoy heading into Beijing?
Well, let's first say I didn't say nothing is wrong in China. I said a lot of things are wrong in China. Okay, let's be very clear. Uh, okay, mass flight cancellations did take place. There's something went wrong then. What went wrong we don't know. It could be a purge. For all you know, it could be that this story of coup could have come out from the CCP and Xi Jinping himself, so that the opposition comes into the open and they're caught. So don't think this is ये भाई ये spy versus spy चल रहा है वहाँ, ठीक
This
है?
is a
And
typical
that
communist
PLA
way of
convoy
working.
I'll give, yeah, that PLA convoy clip I'll treat it. I never spoken of it. Let me speak. I'll always treat such clips with a pinch of salt. They're not verifiable, and they could have been taken any time. Okay, forget
No,
that
the
PLA
SCMP.
convoy. There were mass cancellations of flights, unexplained. Xi Jinping didn't appear for 3-4 days, unexplained. There were those two articles which came out, and that they did speak of color revolutions, unexplained. People have been sent to jail for 10 years, 15 years. Even one guy has been sentenced to death, unexplained. For all which has come out in a post like South China Morning Post, there might be many not reported. So we don't know. So something has happened. We'll leave it at that.
And of course, the SCMP yesterday put out a small article talking about that PLA convoy is about a year-old picture
Yeah,
of
that's it.
a
Look, that's why I
exercise that
said that
took place.
PLA convoy, I will not give much credence.
Yeah,
Okay.
and taking from what you said, sir, you mentioned this SEMP. I'd like to actually remind you the intelligence chief who was put across. The charge against him is going against Xi Jinping's thought.
Thought. That's all. So that's a purge. Let's look. I mean, look. Let's not discuss it anymore because it's a purge and end of story. It doesn't matter what you talk, you'll be thrown.
15 years
So
just to think differently. I
that's how
mean,
China is. So let's take the next question.
yes, sir. Saibal says she is the Brezhnev of China and she is taking China down. China is the same way as Brezhnev did to the Soviet Union. Touched upon a nerve, buddy.
Ah, well, possible. Uh, Highly possible, in fact. Right? What he's saying is highly possible. It will be interesting. Maybe he's given me a thought. Let me compare the Brezhnev era and uh, Xi Jinping era, and to see where it goes. And maybe sometime down the line we'll discuss this.
Saibal, why don't you just write to me? Let's kind of take this thought forward. I want to know where you got this idea from. My email address is there on the channel. Please do connect with me. It'll be nice to kind of hear what you're kind of hinting towards, and see if we can figure this out further. Money, who's been very very vocal about it. There are a lot of comments. He says after North Korea, North Korean heaven, CCP heaven is with Z as his god. And
Yeah,
I'd like
yeah.
to the guys actually put across certain things. I'm just going to read them out and then your comments after that, sir. He says 100 years of humiliation, the CCP can't get over it, and it is the justification for stealing from the West.
Look, I don't think they've ever had 100 years of humiliation externally. Out of this, in the past 100 years, they've humiliated themselves for quite a lot of time. If you look at it during the Great Leap Forward, 30 million or 40 million people died. This is recorded. They treat it as the Great Leap Forward and the Great Famine, but actually it's a man-made famine.
Yep.
Okay, it was made by Mao Zedong. They've humiliated themselves with that. Before that, also they had a famine during the Civil War with Kuomintang. They've humiliated themselves with the one-child policy. They've humiliated themselves with the zero COVID. So where is the century of humiliation? Ever since the last century, they have humiliated themselves. If you want revenge on the century of humiliation, they should take revenge on the CCP. So there's no revenge. And right, this is a well thought out plan as to how to steal from the West and make a kahani and stay in power. Revenge on the century of humiliation is a ploy to continue in power. Period.
So, a small readout, and I'd like to quote from this. There's a gentleman called He Yiting. He was the former executive vice president of the Central Party School, and he says that China is a communist party, is a big party, and it's a big country. It absolutely cannot make strategic mistakes. We've suffered painful lessons before, and we must learn from the past.
Yeah,
Is he
but
hinting at what you just spoke about, sir?
no, not at all. Not at all. Depending on this fellow's orientation, he's either speaking of Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping.
It's not the color. It's not
No, 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 none of this nonsense. And the way I look at it, this chap is more of if you see what Xi Jinping has said, that we
Yeah.
should learn from our past. This fellow is towing that guy's line. So I don't. This chap is not talk. Look, none of the guys in CCP and will talk of the century of their own humiliation.
Thank you for bringing that out, sir. That is, I think, the most important thing. They will leave these veiled hints, but they're not going to talk about it. Let's move on, sir. The next one. Always love to listen to General Shankar. Just one request, General. Please don't use the term South China Sea. Treat work Aadi as always. What would you want us to say?
It's okay, that's okay.
Just to keep it a little lighthearted, so of course. It's
Yeah.
a nice comment. Thank you so much for that. Slightly unrelated question. Generally, you're often said that there are many points along the LAC where we can cause trouble to the PLA. Why haven't we activated them and forced them to vacate the Depsang?
Well, when the time comes, we need to. There are all other issues of escalation dynamics involved. When the time comes, we'll do that. There's no. Look, you have to be patient with the Chinese. So don't. One shouldn't be in a hurry to do things. Yeah.
Mandar, I am putting up your comment because you're a regular viewer, but I'm not sure I understand. This generals who can or cannot find is anybody's guess. If you can please send us a little bit of a
Yeah. And what's the question on that?
I really didn't understand this.
Yeah.
Namaste, sir. Hope you have a coconut ready.
I like that. that's a good one.
The dream was sorry. The dream was power. No vision is there for sustainable growth.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mandar,
That is,
completely.
of course. So, but
There's no doubt.
doesn't the Communist Party feel anywhere responsible for what it's doing? I mean, has
Hey,
human
look,
being.
let's be very clear about one thing about Communist Party. Anywhere, even in India and Bengal, you had communist rule for so many years. Are they ever apologetic of what how they ruined Bengal? Where did they have a vision for growth of Bengal?
And what they're doing in Kerala today. I mean,
You know, what they're doing in Kerala today. So let's not expect them. The communist strike doesn't recognize what you're talking.
sorry, I think I forgot that. Sir. Right. Q question. China plans to increase its military and nuclear arsenal, so China may fall, but the PLA is not going anywhere. How do you see that playing out geopolitically?
Yeah, I've always said a growing military power is always a danger to society, the largest global society.
Uh,
And they might use the military to revive their economic power, right? And by coercion, after all, you look back, how did colonialism come about? Colonialism came about by using military power and forcing people to trade with them. So China might end up doing something like this. As it is, they're doing something like this with all the BRI countries through economic muscle. So they might use military power now to coerce people to trade with them only and block out others. This is on the cards.
that's, I mean, point of thought, I must say. Good evening, sir. Is the General Secretary G beneficial for India with his policies? And also, please share your experience with the PLA, whom they think is the bigger challenge in terms of the army. That's something a lot of people have been asking, sir, offline as well. I need to make all of you guys who've actually served on the LAC talk about your uh, experiences there.
Look, the PLA is a pretty soft army. Okay. The structure is hard, but the people are soft. If you can get past the initial crust of, uh, the outer structure of the PLA, the rest everything will go. That's my conviction. In fact, just few days back, I had a discussion with about 20, 25 officers who were from the LAC, brigade commanders, company commanders, battalion commanders. They were also of the same view. The crux is that the crust has to be broken, and then you'll find that they'll panic.
Just the first impact.
Impact. Let me give you a personal example. Since people are asking, and this is at a fairly high level. Oh, I was in Bombay. I was the GOC of the MNG area when a PLA vice chief came to visit India, and he was transiting through Bombay, and I had to host him. So I hosted him, had gave him lunch and all that, and then it was time to go. A nice lunch. Traditionally, this happened in our mess. So traditionally in our mess, the band is playing outside,
Hmm.
right? And so you're listening to the band. So I told him on your this thing. It's our tradition in the mess that before you go out, you have to present something to the band. None of them knew it, and anyway, I had kept the present ready on his behalf for the band. So I said, let's go to the band, and the band played a tune. He said, any other tune I gave. It's all customary. So there was a wait for about 5 minutes in the sun, and Bombay sun is pretty hot and humid. And this gentleman started sweating, which is normal. I was also sweating. Now suddenly, in fact, his entourage had two major generals besides others. Okay, and these two major generals were one step behind us, and each major general on either side of this Lieutenant General Saab. So when he started sweating, these two major generals stepped forward and reverently took out their hankies and started
Ah,
ponchoing sweat from coming from the dono.
I,
And this man was preening, happy that he was being attended to. And I got shocked, absolutely shocked out of my wits. I said, this is something which I'll never do in my life. I'll be damned if someone touches me when I'm sweating.
no wonder the
I will,
Pakistanis learn all this stuff.
I don't know. I said, that's the first reaction I got. What is this? The second rational thing I said, if this is the kind of the army we're going to deal with, we'll always have an advantage.
Mandar, do we answer your question?
No, no, no. The Chinese generals can't fight. I'm very convinced.
You've just answered it. So I thought I'll just put this up. It was
Yeah,
way far up in the line. Right. Let's move on. Sorry. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, the first part of this question, sir,
yeah,
just a
yeah. It's
joke.
very beneficial for India because he'll ruin China.
Yeah, just a joke.
Thank
As a
you.
matter of fact, me and Ravi Shankar firmly believe that Imran Khan and Xi Jinping are on our
The
payroll
Indian
and they're
side.
doing our job.
If
So,
there's a poll ever conducted opinion poll whether Xi Jinping should return to power, if you're an Indian, you must press yes.
vote yes.
Vote yes.
Don't vote in your own election, but vote there.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is a joke. Global Times came after Adani was just saying
Yeah, they'll
CCP
come.
is gone out.
They'll come.
Yeah,
You can't help it. Yeah.
that's Adani, buddy. They come after us for talking like this. So, you know. China Foreign Affairs spokesperson has unilaterally claimed all is well along the India-China line of actual control, and India has refrained from a strong rebuttal. Why is China in a hurry to claim what is untrue?
No, 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 no. I don't think they have been let go. That article I wrote with Mrs. Tarakarta on decoding the normal prompted a strong comeback from the Chinese ambassador. Many people believed that made him talk and come out in a conference. So I- we know what we are doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Kamal says today was China Day and she was nowhere to be seen. Well, he was at the Tiananmen Square, so that kind of says. Yeah, of course. The second last question for the day is sorry. I am sorry. Yeah, there we go. Chinese are obsessed with India like we are about them. Okay. There are also
No,
reports that Pak army was
see,
training with them in the mountain war tactics. Your thoughts?
the Chinese are not obsessed with India the way we are. They are obsessed with USA,
USA.
and that's our opportunity. They're not totally focused on us. And Rahi baat Pakistan training China, that's normal. That is something I expect them to do.
Just to close up, Xi Jinping going forward, there are big meetings, summits coming up. The G20 is supposed to happen. The after that, the next year, India takes over the SEO, and we also take over the presidency for the Security Council. How's China kind of going to play around with this? Because Xi Jinping would want some sort of an international recognition of his coming back, and he's not going to get it.
We'll see how it. I think it's a little too premature to ask this.
Fair enough,
Let's
sir.
see his. Look, as of today, the 20th Party Congress, 16th to 20th, whenever it is going to happen, seems to be the end of world for China. A new world will start for China after that. So we'll talk of it then.
Sure. Guys, this was basically a prelim session to introduce all of us, to refresh our memories from, to get back from the whole thing of the colonial mindset that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago to the coup in China, which was a funny, light episode that we did. And this is a little more, we've kept it a little light, but actually, if you look at the kind of stuff that we've discussed, is very, very important today in terms of Chinese survival and future. This is a first episode that we will do in terms of an analysis of the 20th Party Congress, Xi Jinping, his re-anointment. And guys, please do see the design which is there where I show him crowning himself. That's exactly what is going to happen. You know, till next time, sir, we will obviously continue our China watch uh, to focus on to various events that are going to take place, and Chinese news is going to get heated up going forward. So stay tuned for a lot of updates on facts, not fiction, right here on the Dev Talks. But before you sign off, please do hit the like button, subscribe, and of course, yes, if you can contribute, thank you so much for the three of you who put in a contribution into my kitty. You can contribute to the UPI or to the join or just sending super stickers or super chats. Till next time, sir, thank you so much for taking this time out. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, and thank you.